I'm really lucky to be joined by Emily Morton, who is our registered nutritionist. Emily, do you want to give me just a little bit of your background so everyone is aware of your expertise and what you're bringing tonight?
Yes, hi everyone. So as Helen said, my name is Emily. I am dual trained as both a registered nutritionist and registered nurse. I have experience working in gynae and in an NHS fertility clinic. Um, I have been at Fertility for almost 4.5 years. I'm the clinical services manager here, and we have a nutrition team and a nursing team, and I have got 4.5 years of experience in interpreting people's hormones, talking through those, and then also counseling them through nutrition, whether it be fertility or PCOS or pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, etc.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to get to a lot of the questions at the end. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Helen O'Neill, and I am an associate professor in reproductive and molecular genetics. And I'm tenured at University College London at the Institute for Women's Health, where I lead my own research group looking at early embryo formation and all of the things that let us know about how humans are formed. And my special interest is in pre-implantation embryo genetics and genome editing. And why that is of relevance is because in my background in genetics and then doing a master's in prenatal genetics and fetal medicine and a PhD in stem cell genetics and looking at how the ovary forms, what I came to realize was that when I go to conferences presenting about such detailed molecular workups and analyses of human embryos and how can we find out about the health of a human embryo, whether it's measuring the way it develops, whether it's measuring the components within the culture media that it's growing in. I remember thinking, how many of these patients have we asked them just about their life, their preconception health, their regular behaviors? And it really got me thinking that in order for us to truly understand and extrapolate a little bit more about fertility, we actually need to go back much further to basics and start to look at our overall reproductive health. So I'm going to share some slides. Emily and I will both be covering slides from the different aspects. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of your questions and answers, and hopefully we're just going to make it a little bit informative. If we see anything pressing that comes through while we're actually presenting, we can just answer there and then. Otherwise, we'll save everything to the session at the end. Guys, I have a million tabs open. I can't find the driver. There we go. I've got it. Sorry. Oh, I have too many tabs open all the time. Okay. Now, when we talk about everything tonight, this is not meant to be medical advice or it's intended for educational purposes only, and it can be really sensitive. It is sensitive for everyone. If you're here, it's because you're trying, you're wondering, and there's going to be some sensitivities to it, and everyone will have different journeys. I'm hoping we can create a safe as intended a space as we are trying, but that you know that there is help at the other side of this, whether it's medical help to get blood testing, whether it's to speak to somebody, at a gynecologist, fertility specialist, a nurse, or counseling. We have all of those services available to you. So please know that when we talk about the things that you should do, our intention is to lead you to help and the appropriate people to talk to. So what does it take to make a baby? We often talk about this as if it's the easiest thing in the world, and so much of our history has been people just doing it literally in the dark and not understanding how it happened. But when we talk about the biology, we tend to separate out the components. We say eggs, sperm, they get fertilized, or the sperm goes into the egg. You need a uterus. These are all the components that are needed to make a baby. But actually, it's not really the case, because when we look across actually what is needed, it's a healthy egg, a healthy sperm, successful ovulation. So you need to be able to release that egg. You need successful fertilization. That doesn't happen every month. You need successful implantation of that embryo. In other words, that embryo needs to have a healthy uterus in order to implant in and grow. And then a successful pregnancy, which is a long wait. So that there can be many points along this process where things can go wrong, and many parts of these components that actually can slow down the journey to making a baby. So we want to talk about each of the different components and how we can really unlock a little bit more information about all of the healthiest way forward. But when we talk about reproductive health, we often diminish it to just our gametes. Our gametes are our egg or our sperm, and we diminish it to everything below the belt. But actually, the World Health Organization definition of our reproductive health encompasses so much more than our gametes. It incorporates our mental health, our physical health, our social well-being. And social well-being just seems strange to have a role in this, but actually it's incredibly important, because the role of community, our relationships, our education are all fundamental to our access or our understanding of our own reproductive health, and our understanding of where we can access help, whether that's medical help or whether it's community-based help. That social well-being part is actually a fundamental part of our overall reproductive health. And then our physical health, how we can actually maybe carry a pregnancy, our overall health, enabling us to achieve that pregnancy, is vital to our reproductive health. And then our mental health plays an inextricable role in our menstrual health and everything else. We published a report showing the inextricable link between mental health and menstrual health. And what's fascinating about our data, bearing in mind this is nearly 1 million women who've completed our health assessment, when we look at the top 10 symptoms that women report: low mood, anxiety, depression. Our mental health plays a vital role in some of the top reported symptoms that women report. So actually, your mental health, given everything that's happening in your brain, and the role that our hormones play on our mental health, and the connection between our hypothalamus, our pituitary, and that it directly linking and signaling with our ovaries, our mental health is really important to our reproductive health. So we like to view fertility and as an overall picture of your health as an individual. But I'm going to go back to basics just for a minute, because when we talk about that key part, which is understanding, when we look at our data, at the number of women who came to us who told us, I am actively trying to conceive. But when we ask them, do you know when your fertile window is? That is the window in every month that you're actually fertile and can get pregnant. 42% said they had no idea when their fertile window was. So these are women who are actively trying, and they don't actually know when is the most appropriate day. So forgive me if this seems basics, but I am going to go back to basics if there's anyone there who needs a little bit of a refresher on the menstrual cycle. So the menstrual cycle, everyone always talks about when we bleed, and we talk about our period. We don't talk about the remaining days around that. And our period, I'm going to start here at day 1. Day 1 of your cycle is the first day that you bleed. And typically our menstrual cycles are around, on average, 28 days. But a normal healthy menstrual cycle can be anything from 21 to 35 days, okay? And the regularity of it, so if you're consistently 31 days, that's regular. If you are 31 one month, 20 the other, 19, 15, then you have a little bit of irregularity. But when we talk about regularity, what we really mean is consistency between the first day of one period to the first day of the next period. How many days are between that? We also mean the amount that you bleed. If you're bleeding way too much, as in you're soaking through your period products within a couple of hours, these are signs that something isn't quite right. Equally, if you're bleeding too little, and for too long, too many days, like 7 days, 8 days, 9 days, or too little, 1 or 2 days, all of these are signs that there's something possibly not right. So what we want to really look into here is, if you think that all of these lines here going up and down are all of the hormones that are intended to be signaled in order for all of the different phases of your menstrual cycle to occur, then if anything is foreshortened, or you're getting extra bleeding or too little bleeding, then you can imagine that one or more of these hormones is actually possibly either being produced in abundance or in a deficit. But when we look at these amazing hormones, they are so profound and powerful to the rest of our overall health. They don't just have a role when it comes to our menstrual cycle or our fertility. And I guess the key one here is estrogen. So what I want you to take a look at here in this menstrual cycle, this cascade of hormones that is going up and down throughout every single month, is the impact that it has on us from a day-to-day function. So the reason that we test your blood at fertility, or anyone, if you're going to test your reproductive hormones, will ask you to test on day 3, is that over here you see this is where all your hormones are at a baseline. So we can get a much better reference of where you're at. But look at how everything rises towards day 14. So 2 weeks into your cycle, it's around the midpoint of your cycle, and that is ovulation. Everything leading up to that is called the follicular phase. And it quite literally means that the follicles within your ovaries are now starting to get enough follicle stimulating hormones to mature at least one egg. So when that one egg is matured, you'll get a trigger, and this one egg will be released. And you can have various signs that your body will give you to let you know ovulation has happened. I feel like I always know when I've ovulated because I get a pain on one side or the other, and it takes turns. So that is physically the egg being released. It's called Mittelschmerz. Mittelschmerz means middle pain in German. And then after, if that egg isn't fertilized, you see this decline of hormones and the rise of progesterone. And so you see that progesterone, if you break it down, its role, progesterone, gestation, which is a pregnancy. These hormones are vital for preparing the womb or the uterus for implantation. And so this window here around ovulation is the only time in your cycle that you can get pregnant. So the couple of days leading up to it, because sperm can live for 72 hours. The sperm it will last long enough till that egg is released. But anything thereafter, once that egg starts to degrade, you're not going to get pregnant and break down. And the hormones that we have in our body that signal fertilization will either allow that egg to be fertilized and continue, or for the egg to break down its corpus luteum, and then you'll get your period. Okay. But it's really important. I hear lots of people and they're like, oh, we're just having sex every few days. And I'm like, well, I would not necessarily wait, but there's not much point in having sex in the latter half if you don't want to, of course. Very often the men in the room are delighted to have to go every few days. And actually, it's not necessarily the case that that's going to do anything for you. So I would save yourself if that's what you want to do, or at least prioritize. I think it's less about, saying we don't have to have sex, but it's more about saying, actually, I'm not going to be disappointed if I don't get pregnant this month if the only time I had sex was in my luteal phase or in my early follicular phase. Okay. So I just thought I'd take a note for ovulation and the prime role that ovulation is going to have in getting us pregnant. So when we talk about age and fertility, everyone tends to freak out over our ovarian reserve and how it declines. I too was somebody who felt that this graph that depicts our ovarian reserve just plummeting was something that actually really freaked me out. I was like, how is it that I could know so much about female reproductive anatomy, physiology, and yet know so little about my own biology, and wonder whether it is that we have, that I would be different to anybody else, or whether it is that I had a higher or lower ovarian reserve than anyone else my age. And so that's really what fertility was born from, was the ability to say, can I track my own ovarian reserve, but to do so and look at it in the context of all of my medical history, my menstrual cycle, whether my cycles are normal, how much I bleed, what my hormones are saying, whether I have any medical history, whether I have had any previous infection. All of those play a role in your fertility, not just your age, but age and your ovarian reserve marker are quite a good determinant, or they give you at least almost like a ballpark. And that's really important to know, that there's a ballpark for you, and therefore you have the ability to do with that what you need. So when we say women are born with all of the eggs they'll ever have, it's quite an interesting process, because we are literally born. So when all of our egg cells start forming, they start forming in utero. So when our mum is pregnant with us, our egg cells are starting to form then. And then when we're born, we'll have around 1 to 2 million eggs. And at puberty, this is around 400,000. And a woman approaching menopause only has around 1,000 to 500 eggs until you're in menopause, where you have no eggs left. So we know that certain quick wins. Low vitamin D has been linked to low AMH, and we know this. We can see through fertility trends. People are less likely to conceive during the winter months, and the health of those babies are actually different, which stands to reason if you are vitamin deficient and it's in a dark winter versus in the summer. And those hormone levels, our hormone levels are actually susceptible. We're going to publish about this soon, to the weather. So it's amazing to think that our lifestyles, even from just a sun exposure perspective, can impact our different hormone levels. But I want to take a moment just for this average age of first child stat here, for the fact that we are now a much older generation of women who are looking to have a family for the first time. The average age of a first child in 1950 was 24, and in that now the average age for first child is 32. So it's a much higher first age. I always remember how devastating it was for me to go to the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and see this old historical wall that they had showing showing a poster for clinicians saying what to do with the geriatric mother, and a geriatric mother was 27. And it made me realize how distanced we've become from what a woman would do in the wild. I see this back. Let's put us back in the cave, right? We wouldn't be going to university. We wouldn't be getting jobs. We wouldn't be living our best lives. We wouldn't need two salaries in order to just survive. So I feel like there's so much more for us and so much more against us when it comes to motherhood. The expectations are huge. And I think that there's never been more expectations on women to be the boss, breadwinner, baby maker, to go to yoga, get a facial, get your nails done, call your mother, freeze your eggs. There is so much that we are all now just told that are the things that we need to do in order to have everything together. So I hope this graph doesn't depress you as much as it did for me. But if we are born with 1 to 2 million eggs, we're obviously not fertile when we're born, if that makes it feel any better. But egg health is one of the biggest, subjects that we like to talk about.
Can I stop you and go back because I've got some nutrition nuggets in terms of ovarian reserve
Yes,
in addition to AMH.
throw in the nuggets with the eggs.
But I wasn't sure. I don't think also we explained what AMH was.
You're right.
So, just to explain what AMH is, so AMH is anti-Müllerian hormone. So it's the hormone that's given off by the follicles within the ovaries, and it's the follicles that are the fluid-filled sacs that your eggs grow inside. So AMH is one of the tests that we test for at fertility, and it's a marker of ovarian reserve. And actually, I got asked the question earlier if it's that can interpret the full picture of fertility, and we would never tell you what your fertility is just based off of an AMH test. So I think that's really important. We always interpret it in context of the rest of your hormones, your symptoms, your lifestyle, and obviously this is just one part of the puzzle as well. But I do have some other nutrients that have been linked to a lower ovarian reserve. And so one of those has actually been, or an optimum ovarian reserve, is supplementing with a preconception supplement in terms of AMH levels. Selenium, interestingly, which is a very powerful antioxidant, has been associated with adequate antral follicle count. So I just mentioned, explained what AMH was, but when we look at antral follicle count or AFC, that's where we're going to look at those follicles on an ultrasound scan, and the sonographer can literally count how many of those follicles you've got. So it's the AMH and antral follicle count that can give us a full picture of your ovarian reserve. Dairy, interestingly as well, has also been associated with better ovarian reserve. Omega-3s, I feel like these feature heavily throughout every single talk that I do. They really do come out on top all the time for fertility, but it has been associated with a better ovarian reserve. A BMI between 19 and 25 is optimum. Moderate exercise. Avoiding ultra-processed foods, which is definitely a hot topic at the moment. And one of them, interestingly, which I think we'll go into on the next slide, but is about endocrine disruptors, and one of those being phthalates. And phthalates are particularly associated with women with lower ovarian reserves. And we can get phthalates in loads of household goods. They're found in loads of medical equipment, even syringes, I was thinking someone gave my daughter like a little doctor's kit. And it's got all of the hospital syringes in there. And I was like, oh, I knew that it probably wasn't, it was maybe from like a cheaper store. So maybe hadn't like passed the ideal checks for children's toys. But I think that that has probably got lots of phthalates in, and she's there, putting it in her mouth, chewing on it. It's
It's
in.
actually frightening when when we start to look at all of the different things. Like I feel like I'm hard to be around because I'm like,
I'm the same, Helen.
oh,
I'm the same.
I would take that out of your life. But if we can give you like a quick, we don't have a list on endocrine disruptors, do we?
If you go on to the next slide,
Yeah,
it's not
let's get to that.
not a list, but
Yeah.
I can go through loads of tips that I have because,
Okay,
like you
you do
said,
yours and I'll do mine because when it
I,
comes to egg health, most people say we can't measure our egg. We can relatively measure egg quantity, but we can't measure egg quality. Now, fun fact, we did apply and were successful in getting a grant to measure to take the cumulus cells, which are the surrounding cloud of cells from eggs from women going through IVF, so that we can try and measure levels of success. So we are actually working on some research. So if anyone's going through IVF and in London and wants to donate their cumulus cells, they're stripped anyway from the eggs, please let us know. But we are we're trying to work on a way of figuring out egg quality. But as Emily mentioned, mostly we can only use relative measures of how many eggs we have. So Emily, if you want to talk about your list of things to avoid in order for better egg and sperm health and general endocrine disruptors, you go, and then I will go.
I love this. Okay, so I guess like first ones to go through on actually let's just finish with phthalates as well.
Yeah.
So the key like the key areas I guess in your household that you would find those are some of the ones I mentioned, but also hairspray, nail varnish, some products that you would put in your skin or on your skin, and then some plastic packaging that food comes in as well, and things like shower curtains. So those are the ones to be mindful of in terms of ovarian reserve, but in terms of kind of fertility as a whole, and actually just health as a whole as well. But like we say, also egg quality and sperm quality. It's about limiting air pollutants, which I think we're going to go into. So, smoking, vaping, pollution if you can, which is really tricky. If you live in the city, you're walking down a polluted street, people are walking past you, you're getting passive cigarette smoke. It's so hard to get away from, which is why it can be good to kind of spend as much time as you can in greener areas or maybe take like a greener route rather than walking down a busy street. And then endocrine disruptors and environmental toxins, and then also pesticides and herbicides. So, my tips, I've got quite a long list. So, firstly, I would just start off with being able to wash all of your fruit and veg, even if it's like an orange that you're going to peel, wash it so that you're not like pushing the chemicals into the orange. Um, that's really easy, that tip. I think you just need to get into the habit of it. Wash them well. Buy organic if you can afford to. But again, even with organic food, make sure that you wash it well. So like your non-toxic household cleaning stuff, so like your worktop cleaners, your dishwasher tablets, your washing machine stuff, your makeup products, your hair uh, creams, all of this stuff as much as you can, trying to eliminate toxins from those. Um, and making sure that if you're storing food, put it in glass containers where you can, china, make sure that you're covering it with like I don't know, like a plate or paper as opposed to using plastic cling film. Don't heat foods in the microwave in plastic. If you're gonna buy a soup,
Never.
don't do it. And
Don't
people
do
are
it.
like,
Do
please
not heat
do this, and
plastic.
they still do it. And on that, don't put your plastic in the dishwasher either. So don't put plastic chopping boards in the dishwasher. I mean, try not to have them all together, but if you're going to use them, don't put them in the dishwasher. Um,
Emily, this is how I would say the word neurotic is not the case, but when you know, you know. I don't use my dishwasher. It's my biggest thing. I do the dishes going, "Fuck's sake," because I'm that concerned about like I can't seem to find
chemicals on it.
my problem was when I got pregnant. all I could smell was
Yeah.
chemicals. I could taste chemicals. And I feel like it is the most evolutionary protective mechanism where your body and your senses are heightened so
Yeah.
that you're saying, this is dangerous for me. And I feel like I was definitely like that. I was like a bloodhound. I was like, chemicals, chemicals. And I couldn't seem to get anything out of the dishwasher without it tasting of the chemicals.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the same with like washing up liquid if it's flavored. So
Yeah.
yeah, again, I have to get one.
What we need to do on this, because
Flavored.
this is literally like
Yeah,
just throw everything in your house out type of list, is we need to actually combine or compile a list for everyone of the things. And I'd love to cross compare with you, because there's nights where I spend more time researching what dishwasher or what laundry detergent to use
yeah,
than I do anything else. At one point, I bought all these separate chemicals and I mixed them in. Like we just need some ascorbic acid. We just need this. Classic scientist. Anyway, yeah. And again, I think a quick rule of thumb that are the quickest rules for your house. And even if it's not forever, because I know it's hard. Some people are like, God, I can't do anything. I can't pay my nails.
yeah.
Even if you were to do it just for the journey to conception, the 3 months leading up to it, and pregnancy, right? Candles, quick win. Get rid of any flavored candles. They have so many endocrine disrupting chemicals in the perfumes. Perfume, try and limit your perfume use, because perfumes also have endocrine disruptors. So there's candles. I generally say this, it's the C's: candles, creams. Um, Try and not put too many creams, especially ones with retinol. Is it retinol or retinoic acid?
Retinol when you're trying to conceive. Yeah,
When you're trying to conceive, don't have creams with retinol in them.
yeah.
So candles, creams, cosmetics, just
Mm.
be mindful of the cosmetics. Um,
I
Clothes, your
yeah,
clothes.
clothes.
So many people wear nothing but synthetic fibers, whether it's your leggings that are all
Yeah,
polyesters, your jumpers, tops. Your body can't breathe and can't get rid of uh, its natural layers. So when you're essentially, it's like wrapping yourself in plastic. Um, so when you start to see the world in the way that we have now been exposed, I remember sitting in my kitchen just looking around, being like, I've got polyurethane floors. I've got like everything. I looked around my counters. I was like, my whole surrounding is essentially plastic, and it's hard to reconcile with.
yeah.
But I think that's why I say the quick win list are like your cleaning products, your cosmetics, your um candles. Those are things that you can be like, right, okay, for the next while. And then nails. So acrylic nails and the nail varnishes. I have. Uh, Nothing, because I there was a recent study that showed it had a 16 times increase in um, polyfluoral alkylating substances that were in your body following a manicure or following an acrylic nail session. So it's just not worth it. You've got a limited time in your life that you're going to be trying, and you want to be your best self. Go back to it afterwards, and maybe that helps. Okay, Emily, we're going to crack on because we've got much more to get through, and I really want to answer people's questions. Okay,
Yeah, go for it.
good. So this is why we really want to help you focus on that preconception journey, because sometimes we just go into it, and actually it makes a big difference to the health of your pregnancy and the health of your child if you invest in that preconception journey. So it's the most overlooked step when it comes to making a baby, is a preconception lifestyle. So we're going to start with sperm health, because sperm have been the most overlooked aspect of any pregnancy journey. It upsets me to no end when I see women who are going through really difficult journeys from pregnancy to miscarriage, for fertility treatment, and they are doing everything. They are removing the candles. They are eating their kale and kombucha. They are trying to be as healthy as they can. They're taking their prenatals, and their partner is just living their best life, drinking what they want, smoking, anything else. We now know that sperm health is of equal importance. It shouldn't be a surprise, but it is 50% of all infertility and 50% of fertility. So when we look at sperm health, this is the quickest win. So when you find you can eliminate your candles, but start with the sperm health, because we are born with all the eggs we'll ever have. So whatever we've been exposed to in our life, our eggs have been exposed to. Sperm, on the other hand, has a life cycle of 74 days. So it's around 3 months for a sperm to be to start as a spermatogonial stem cell to be made into a sperm to ejaculate. That 3 month window can have incredible changes if you change in your lifestyle factor for all of the features of healthy sperm. And when we talk about the features of healthy sperm, in case you get a, a sperm test, and we can facilitate that, so message us if you want one, are quantity, the number of it, the number of sperm, motility, whether they're moving, and the morphology. So we want to be looking at whether there are a huge number of sperm, but we want them to be motile, we want them to be alive, and we want them to be swimming in the right direction. So we want them to be progressively motile. And then the morphology is the shape. If you look down a microscope at sperm, you'd be amazed to see some of them have two heads, some have two tails, some of them the head is tiny, some of them the head is big. So that morphology, which is the shape, is really important. And all of those factors can be improved upon with just small changes within 3 months going up to a pregnancy journey. But the factors that affect, so I've put some of the male reproductive health conditions here just because the wording can be quite difficult when we talk about oligo or azoospermia or asthenozoospermia. Essentially, what those are very complex words for no sperm, low sperm count, poor motility, abnormal sperm morphology. So these are just things to help you with. And then varicocele is more to do with the testis itself. And so it's important that you just understand those words so that you don't see, if you got a sperm analysis done, oligozoospermia, and you wonder why the word zoo is in there. So when we looked at the factors that affect male fertility, age is still there. Everyone loves to quote, Mick Jagger having kids in his 70s. Yes, you can have kids in your 70s if you're a man, but the quality of your sperm is definitely not what it should be. And men accrue a large number of mutations as you get older too. So you're not impervious to the impact of age on your sperm. Heat, so if your testicles are in and near a heat substance, like if chefs tend to have impacted sperm, physical activity, so actually cyclists kind of have impacted sperm because the pressing up of the saddle into the testis can have an impact. So then recreational drugs play a huge role, smoking, pollution, genetics, medical conditions. There's a big list here, but we're going to tell you some of the things that are actually can be helped within that 3-month life cycle. And I just want to take a moment for the fact that, yes, we know that sperm contribute 50% of the DNA, but actually recent studies have shown that higher paternal age, so the older the dad, is linked to increased miscarriage, increased preeclampsia, preterm birth, stillbirth, and altered birth weight, and paternal smoking, obesity, poor diet, or chemical exposure before conception increases the risk of pregnancy loss and adverse perinatal outcomes. What we actually now also see is that the sperm is actually much more likely to, the DNA in the sperm is much more likely to contribute to the placenta. So miscarriage, where everyone used to say, well, 1 in 4 women would experience a miscarriage, and they would say, well, that's just what women have. Actually, miscarriage is much more likely to be linked to sperm health than uterine health. So it's a really important aspect of not just your ability to conceive and carry a pregnancy, but to keep that pregnancy and the health of your baby as well. Okay, so this I don't think we can overlook this in any way anymore. And then Emily, just tell us a little bit about nutrition and sperm health. The bit about the walnuts is my favorite.
Um, and yeah, I guess just to say on this firstly is that because sperm is so easy to test, we do know that making changes to your diet and lifestyle can be seen in changes within the sperm within 1 to 2 weeks. So it can be as quick as that, which is, good news if you're kind of haven't been putting in as much as effort as what you should have been up until this point. But again, this is the first time that this has been featured in this talk, and I usually say it about 20 times throughout a talk, but I'm now going to introduce the Mediterranean style diet. So these are the foods to include. The Mediterranean style diet always comes out top in terms of a pro-fertility diet for both female and male fertility. So we want to be including kind of lots of plant-based proteins, healthy fats, our fiber-rich carbohydrates, nuts and seeds, oily fish, lots of antioxidants from a whole variety of fruit and vegetables, having moderate intakes of lean meats, eggs, and then limiting our red and processed meats, which you can also see on the other side in terms of foods to reduce or avoid. So we want a high fruit and veg intake. We want to prioritize antioxidants. So we get antioxidants from a wide range of different colored fruit and vegetables. We can also get it from herbs and spices. We can also get them from omega-3s, which is that point below. And I guess like the best advice to give you is when you're doing your food shop, just think about how much variety you can get in through the diet. So think about your different colored fruit and vegetables. So thinking of your anthocyanins that you can get from your red cabbage and your blueberries, your carotenoids that you can get from carrots and your squash, lycopene that you can get from your tomatoes. And actually, lycopene, you can find so much lycopene in things like tin tomatoes because there's so many tomatoes that make up a tin. So that's actually a really good place to start when kind of trying to put it in practical terms. And actually, if you're someone who likes to have things like curries and stuff, making a swap of something like a coconut milk that can be really high in saturated fat and making it like more of a tomato-based curry is a really quick win in terms of reducing sat fats, which are not great for sperm health, and getting some of those lycopenes in there. So in terms of omega-3 fatty acids, so we get these from oily fish, so mackerel, sardines, salmon, and things like trout. So you want to be aiming for 1 to 2 portions of those per week. That's for male and female fertility, or thinking about supplement if you don't like oily fish. You can get it from plant-based versions as well. So things like walnuts and chia seeds and flax seeds, but it has to be converted into EPA and DHA, which is what we want, whereas the plant-based versions come in ALA. So you can't just rely on the plant-based versions as your main source of omega-3. So you do have to kind of consider the fish or supplement version. Um, and this one's been inconclusive in the research for quite some time, but low-fat dairy potentially is better to include than full-fat dairy. We want to be avoiding our high GI foods, so things like our kind of refined carbohydrates like white bread and sugary drinks, aiming for less than 300 milligrams per day of caffeine, which is around a couple of coffees. And soy foods as well might be one to watch, especially for men if you know that you've got low sperm concentration. Otherwise, for men that or aren't aware of that or have normal sperm concentration that they're aware of, then actually you might be able to include some, but just to be mindful of it and perhaps have it in kind of lower intakes, lower to moderate at least, and not kind of over consuming in that area, which is like, everything really we should be having in kind of moderation. Um, we know that a low BMI and a high BMI both can affect sperm parameters. And here's the fun fact on walnuts is that 75 grams a day of walnuts can result in improvements in sperm count, motility, and morphology. Thanks to the healthy fats found in them. However, what I will say is, as much as it's a fun fact, I think is a good example as to why nutrition, whilst this is kind of, we're like counts educating everyone on this, it is really individualistic. And so I'm biased, but I know the power of nutrition. And actually, for some people that will go away and spend hundreds of pounds on supplements or green powders that they've been targeted with online, that aren't necessarily going to do anything for them. If you were to just commit to one nutrition consultation, that's all you will need. You just need a one-off, even just one throughout your lifetime, just in terms of general health as well. But particularly when we're thinking about fertility, it's so tailored to you. So actually, if someone came to me who's perhaps got a higher BMI, and perhaps we are thinking about being mindful of like higher fat intakes, and it might be that 75 grams a day of walnuts aren't actually suitable for that person. So I think, and I guess another point to make as well, and we'll kind of lead on to this in the following slides, but and we'll talk about antioxidants through supplementation. Actually, Helen, you can move on to the next one anyway, whilst I'm on this point. Is that it needs to be really tailored. So this is a list of antioxidants on the left, folate being having antioxidant properties, but I guess is important. So these ones on the left we're kind of talking about through the diet, but also, as I said, we'll go on to supplements in a moment, but we do have to be really mindful about how much we are supplementing with. So I'll talk about just that in a second when thinking about kind of a tailored approach. But just to go through the main micronutrients that kind of come out on top when we're thinking of sperm health, and zinc being one of the very powerful antioxidants. And zinc is the only nutrient that is actually authorized to make claims about the beneficial effects that it has on fertility. It's the only one from manufacturers. So if you see a claim on a supplement, that's the reason why, because we know that it does have beneficial effects enough for it to have been kind of passed those checks through the EU um, food and supplement service. Can't think of the word. Something. But essentially, and what those claims say is that it can support testosterone levels in the blood, but also support reproductive health and fertility. But it does help with healthy sperm production and sperm motility, and it is lost in every ejaculate as well. So it is a really important one to focus on because we do need to replenish it. But good sources, you'll find it in oysters and chickpeas. Folate, like I said, it does have antioxidant effects.
Anything other than oysters and chickpeas?
Pardon?
Anything other than oysters and chickpeas?
Nuts and seeds
Nuts
and
and
beans and
seeds. Okay.
pulses as a whole, but those two are in
Practically,
particular.
I don't. Oysters, not a
Yeah,
daily.
no, it's a fair point, but those two have got like the higher amounts in. That's why they're on there.
Okay, so I guess hummus, right?
Hummus as well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
hummus contains it. Shop ball or if you make your own. But yeah, nuts and seeds as well, and yeah, beans and pulses as a whole. Um, Folate. So it's really so in terms of supplements, you'll find that folate or folic acid always tends to feature in male supplements, but definitely in female supplements, which we'll get to in a moment. But it's really important to make sure that you're including folate from the diet, not just from supplementation. And it's needed for sperm in terms of DNA synthesis. So you can get it from dark green leafy veg and things like avocado is a good example as well as somewhere you can find it that people don't really realize that it's in. Um, but most of your dark green leafy veg, you're going to find folates in. Vitamin C and vitamin E are both really powerful antioxidants again. So for vitamin C, it can support sperm quality. Vitamin E protects the lipid membrane from DNA damage. So you'll find vitamin C in things like broccoli, red pepper, citrus fruits. Vitamin E you'll find in healthy fats, so things like nuts and olive oil. Selenium improves sperm parameters, so you can get that in things like Brazil nuts, which is, I know, one of Helen's favorite facts. So it's about one or two a day to meet the requirements as a female, and about three or four as a male. However, it can vary, obviously, depending on what like size and stuff of the Brazil nuts. But I think it's important to note here that if you are supplementing with a supplement because of its association with fertility, it's like pretty much guaranteed that selenium is going to be in that supplement. So you really need to be cautious if you are like going to go and eat Brazil nuts throughout the day about whether your supplement is containing it as well, because we can reach too high levels and we have to consider that actually when thinking about supplements and combining it with food as well. So again, we'll go into more detail in terms of that in a second, but just to be very mindful of that. And then I spoke about lycopenes a moment ago as well in terms of finding them in things like tinned tomatoes and tomato juice, but they can help with sperm concentration and motility. You can also get in things like watermelon and pink guava as well, but obviously tomato is a bit more common one, an easy one to get in. Um, so there is loads of research showing that combined antioxidant supplements can have a positive effect on sperm parameters, but we have a but coming. So that's the next slide.
Okay, so a recent paper that came out from an incredible group of scientists actually showed that if you take too many of the micronutrients for male fertility, especially, you can have too much oxidative stress, and that means you essentially damage the sperm. So you really shouldn't take overdose on supplements. The worst thing I ever see is when you see somebody in the morning and they've got this hand full of all of these different supplements, and um, they're just essentially taking them all at once. It's bad for two reasons. Number one, because you overdose on certain supplements, especially if you're eating things throughout the day. So a food first approach to try to some of these nutrients is much better, but appreciably that's hard. But also the number the third biggest killer of people in the States today is what's called polypharmacy, and that is taking lots of different drugs at the same time. So you're taking all of your medication at the same time. It kills old people, because when you're old, you're typically, when you get older, you're on a lot more different types of medication, but people tend to take it together. And the analogy I always give for this is orange juice is fine, toothpaste is fine, but drinking orange juice after you clean your teeth, it tastes disgusting. And if you imagine the same of the cross reaction of some micronutrients, but also any drugs you're taking, it can have a massive effect. It can have either a negative effect, or it can have a redundant effect. In other words, people often take iron at nighttime, and they'll also take their magnesium. And when you're taking iron and magnesium, they basically cancel each other out. They compete for absorption. So the iron that you're taking isn't having any impact at all, because it has such low absorption, and the magnesium that you're taking is going to compete for it. So it's kind of important. It's a bit of a minefield, but space these things out and just be aware of what you're taking. Don't just throw a whole bunch of things in your hand and then take even those drinks that you can buy in the shop, and it's like, oh, this is my energy drink, and it contains, or my vitamin water, and it contains too much of anything. So this paper was published this year, and they essentially looked at healthy subjects. High doses of antioxidants, especially carnitine, tripled the DNA damage and reduced the pregnancy rates. So what's sad about this is, consumers are being told, like, take this, it will help you conceive, and it's actually having the opposite effect. And then and the subjects and the participants of the study who had oxidative stress, the same supplements were beneficial and protective. So you should only be taking it if you actually have oxidative stress. And then high doses of carnitine can be used in a lot of these supplements, and they were to cause sperm mitochondria to go into overdrive. So the authors of the paper are here. They actually do. I don't recommend or promote any supplements, just because it's a minefield, but they do have a supplement called Fertilix. So if you are going to get a supplement for sperm, I would go with these guys. They know more than anyone in the field about it, and they're also concerned with all of the different nutrients that are being given, and the impact that it could have on oxidative stress and reductive stress as well. So
I think there's like a few points, like, I guess, to conclude from this is that one is that if you are going to take supplements and you're taking any medications, then check with your doctor that they don't interact. And then the next thing is that I guess it makes sense that then if you are trying to conceive that and you are kind of interested in taking supplements, that you do go for a semen analysis, and then you can bring those results to a registered dietitian, to a registered nutritionist who works in this field, like myself and our team. And then we can look at which ones you've got shortfalls in, and we can recommend you specific supplements. Because, like Helen said, in this study, when there were people with oxidative stress, and oxidative stress could have a knock-on effect to those and lower some of those parameters, we can help give you supplement advice for each of those parameters to improve, rather than just kind of recommending like a blanket approach. But I guess lasting point, because people will want to take supplements, and I do get it, especially if you have got shortfalls in the diet as well, is that if you are choosing a supplement, what you'll find is that most of the brands, because of kind of the doses that have been tested in research, they'll be at like 200 to 300% of your NRV. And so your NRV is your nutrient reference value. So you want to make sure that you're choosing supplements that aren't like in those 200, 300% of, but actually close to what your recommended intake is per day. And again, if you ever need tailored support with that, then speak to a registered nutritionist or
just go
dietitian.
to Emily. She knows everything. I've never learned more than what I'd learned from Emily. Even just having a webinar with you, I learn every day. You're amazing, Emily. Um,
Ellen, well, likewise.
Okay, Emily, I'm going to make us crack on because we've actually got so much more to get through and we've
Yes,
less than
go
9 minutes left. So I'm hoping everyone's going to stay with us.
for it.
Thankfully, everyone has actually. So I'm very grateful for that. But there's just so much information we wanted to get into this webinar. So forgive us for, we care a lot about this stuff. So hopefully we'll give you a lot of value with this webinar and that it's not all too much. Okay, Emily, do you want to take I want to say a whistle stop tour, but really a lot of it is kind of overlapping in terms of
Yeah.
what's good for egg health here.
Yeah, so I'll try and be quick now. So I guess so I lightly touched on the supplements that we should be taking in terms of female fertility. So there's only two that are recommended in terms of public health guidelines in the UK. So that is folic acid, and that's 400 micrograms per day in the 3 months prior to conception, as well as vitamin D, 10 micrograms per day. So those are the two recommended supplements. However, you can also take a preconception supplement as well that does have many other micronutrients in there. And actually, as you can see on the right, a regular preconception supplement can reduce the risk of ovulation problems, can support your AMH levels, as I mentioned earlier, can strengthen antioxidant defenses, supporting egg quality, embryo quality, and time to conception. And because of the nature of the egg cells, we don't need to worry so much about the antioxidants through supplementation like we do with sperm health. We still obviously have to be mindful in terms of not over supplementing, but most of the brands will kind of contain sort of recommended doses that are more suitable for us. So, like I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we're getting the folate in through the diet as well. But those are the two ones that we really need to supplement with. And I've put adequate levels here for vitamin D support ovarian follicle development because that's the real key when it comes to vitamin D, is that anything below adequate levels are associated with infertility, but actually anything beyond that isn't going to show any additional benefit. So it is just about having adequate levels. So that's why you'll find most supplements have the 10 micrograms, some will go up to 25, but you don't need any more than that unless you are deficient. And in which case, go and get a vitamin D test, and then we can recommend a supplement to you. A BMI between 19 to 25. Again, I brought that up earlier. So that optimizes egg quality. Again, it doesn't mean to say that you won't be able to get pregnant if your BMI is kind of beyond that, but that's just where we see optimum egg quality. Again, omega-3s, I've already spoken about those, where you can find them, but they reduce inflammation, support follicle development. It is important that you don't have any more than 1 to 2 portions of oily fish per week, though, as a woman. Again, it can kind of increase the risk of toxicity. And then again, it's about the Mediterranean style diet in terms of many outcomes when it comes to fertility. Next.
Oh, this is something just that I think is very cool as a scientist because it makes you realize the role of just some of these micronutrients. So this is the moment that a sperm, there's millions of sperm usually fertilize an egg, but the moment that the one gets in and it's fertilized, you see this flash uh, of zinc. It's called the zinc spark. So watch. Isn't that incredible?
It's
Like it just
amazing.
shows you if you have a deficiency in something that's so essential for fertilization that actually that you really do require zinc. And we don't think about the micronutrients and we think about
Yeah,
macronutrients all the time,
but
but we
not the
don't
mic.
think,
Yeah.
look at that. It's like a magic moment that's happened, this zinc flash. So when we think about our micronutrients, it's also important to understand in what food has zinc in it, Emily?
Oysters and chickpeas and beans and pulses and nuts and seeds.
Oysters. Oh, okay.
Oysters.
Wait, chickpeas. Okay. I do know. I actually take tins of. I've make something now, and I'll make it every couple of days, maybe at least once a week, and I call it the 3 bean queen because my daughter needs incentivization by being called a queen. But I basically will just put like chickpeas, corn, lentils, or I'll put like just basically types of beans, and I just warm it with butter and I mix it up. The sweet corn makes it sweeter, but even if it's not like the most delicious thing in the world, I eat it as if it's medicine. I'm like, I am going to eat this, even if I have to. And actually, it's quite yum with just butter on it. But it's my way of saying like I would rather supplement with a bowl full of beans, my chickpeas, my, lentils, and, stomach that and know that I'm getting the fiber, the protein, and all of those nutrients from it. I'm like, it takes nothing to do. 3 tins of different types of beans, plus corn, and it's quite nice. So there's my small fact to get your
There's
protein and your iron, or sorry, to get your protein and your fiber in, but also some of your nutrients. So yeah,
iron as well, because you can get iron from beans as well. And also there was a huge research paper that came out as well about the beneficial effects of beans, not on women's health, but in terms of gut health
yeah.
and reducing cancer risk as well. And it was a portion of beans per day over 8 weeks greatly reduced the risk.
Okay.
So
Who's with me on becoming a bean queen?
me.
Become a bean queen, even if you don't love it. It's so good for you. It's just so worth it. We do worse things to ourselves that we definitely don't enjoy. So, and on to iron, how important iron is.
So we need iron in terms of healthy ovulation and proper follicle development, supporting oxygen delivery to the ovaries. Um, if you've got a deficiency in iron or low iron stores, it can cause irregular cycles, fatigue, and ovulatory infertility, where we're unable to ovulate. So women of reproductive age are the most iron deficient group in the UK, and iron deficiency is the
Women are the most
biggest.
iron deficient group. Women are just iron. About 30 to 40% of women are iron deficient.
And it's the biggest micronutrient deficiency in women in the world,
And
which is
our iron is the most fundamental part of our bone health, our energy levels, our brain. Iron is literally what carries like blood around our bodies. Like without proper iron, which we are on a fighting battle against it. It's like it's the ultimate leaky bucket, because we lose our blood every single month. So instead of keeping iron, we are constantly losing it. So um, it
uh,
is more than likely that if you feel fatigue, low mood, hair thinning, any bit of dizziness or shortness of breath, then you are very anemic and you have a lot of very low iron. Um, and it's
and
going to be a big indicator if you've got heavy periods. That's like a no-brainer.
is it our most common reported symptom, Helen?
Fatigue. Yeah, we're all tired and angry, actually. I'll pull up while you're talking about this slide, I'll pull up
And
the data. We're all
um,
hangry.
but yeah, food sources. Obviously, I think the obvious one is red meat, but actually opting for plant-based sources of iron, so your non-heme iron, is actually really important, and especially when it comes to fertility. So there's some food examples there, so like lentils, spinach, tofu, pumpkin seeds. Also, if you have it with some vitamin C, I mentioned some sources earlier, like broccoli, spinach, citrus, berries, etc., then you can also enhance the absorption. And then just be mindful of having things like tea and coffee either side of iron. So perhaps leaving like a 1 to 2 hour gap, so that you're not inhibiting the absorption of iron.
Iron is, we're so bad at absorbing iron. So it is, if you can do these small things, which are that you do not, if you're taking a supplement for iron, do not take it every day because there's no point. You cannot absorb it every single day. Take it every second day. When you're taking it, try and take it on an empty tummy. So idea and when you're not planning on eating afterwards, and always take it with vitamin C. So those 3 rules: take it every second day, take it with vitamin C, so you increase the absorption, and try and take it on an empty tummy when you're planning on having an empty tummy. So maybe before bed, so that you are optimizing as much as possible. And if you are getting your sources of iron through that bean queen, then you will circumnavigate to a certain extent the biggest thing that we risk when we take iron supplements, which is constipation. So at
Yeah.
least if you're increasing your fiber, throw the chia seeds into everything. That's Dr. Federica Amati she says fiber, get those chia seeds into your yogurt in the morning, get them into your porridge, get them into anything just to get a little bit more fiber to try and mitigate the impact of iron.
No,
But soon
sure.
we're setting up an iron pathway with fertility, so you can check your iron and you can get an iron infusion, just because every woman probably needs an iron infusion if you're feeling like this.
Helen, we're at 9. What should we
I
do? Should we go to questions,
You know
or
what we'll do? If anyone is up for staying with us, you can drop off. We have a recording. If nobody has anywhere to be at 9 o'clock, so if you're willing to stay with us till the end, we'll just crack on. We'll only be 5 minutes, and then we'll get to some of the questions as well. Is that okay?
yeah, we'll whiz through this so quickly then. So I guess I'll just condense this. So your microbiome is a collective name for a community of microbes. So it's made up of bacteria, fungi, parasites, and viruses. We've got microbiomes all over the body, including our gut, mouth, and vagina. And they exert effects in terms of heart health, digestion, immunity, skin, brain function, sexual health, and fertility. So we're going to get into
Basically,
that,
it's not us in control of our bodies or our health. It is our microbiome that is dictating our overall health,
which is fascinating.
which is fascinating. You can literally give people capsules of other people's poo. They're called crapsules. And it's like a fecal transplant of somebody's poo into
Yeah.
your colon, and you can have reduced symptoms of your, or equally, you can give somebody the symptoms. So, this is even shown in animals and in humans that if you do fecal transplants, you can literally cure people of certain illnesses that they have. The gut microbiome is incredibly important in our overall health. How do we make sure we have a diverse and floral and flourishing microbiome? Emily.
I guess we can skip, I guess we'll skip through these, but there is a link in terms of gut microbiome and fertility for various different factors. Some of those being it's linked with body size, a link with PCOS, linked with endometriosis, food allergies, poor gut absorption, poor absorption of your key nutrients that are involved in fertility that can increase your risk of things like miscarriage even. It can reduce levels of inflammation, which could impact on things like implantation. And also, it can metabolize estrogen, which can affect ovulation and implantation. So, next slide, because that's the estroblome or estroblome. So it's a group of gut microbes that control how estrogen is broken down, recycled, or cleared. And it's important because it shapes estrogen levels that affect ovulation, cycle regularity, PMS, and estrogen-driven conditions. So one of those being endometriosis. So it's really important because it just essentially means that if you have got excess of estrogen, which obviously we don't want too little of, but we also don't want too much of. So we want to make sure that we're expelling it from the body as well. So one way that you can help with that is through fiber.
And it literally controls the porosity between the bowel and the gut. So it's so important to have a diverse gut microbiome, not just for fertility, but even into perimenopause and beyond. That actually has a huge role on how we synthesize estrogen. So, let's talk about the vaginal microbiome. The vaginal
Um,
microbiome.
So, a healthy vaginal and endometrial microbiome is typically dominated by lactobacillus. So, lactobacillus basically helps to protect against pathogens, but it also helps to control the pH of the vagina, which we want to be acidic. So if you've got dysbiosis of the vagina, it can cause conditions such as BV and also thrush. And vaginal and endometrial dysbiosis can increase the risk of early miscarriage. Endometrial dysbiosis has also been linked to recurrent implantation failure, and it might be something worth exploring if you fall into that category. 10% of people who experience unexplained infertility. Um, Symptoms to look out for are irritation, odor, discharge changes, but unfortunately, for some people, they can also be asymptomatic as well. So what can we do? So again, lots of features in terms of what we've already discussed throughout the slides, but whole foods, variety is really key. So again, just aiming for that rainbow of color when it comes to fruit and veggies. Probiotics, so probiotics, whether you kind of decide to go down the supplementation route or you're getting probiotics from your fermented foods. So fermented foods such as sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, or live bio yogurt, natural, not your sweetened or like strawberry flavor, etc. 30 grams a day of fiber. In the UK, we only reach around 18 grams of fiber. So it's really important, not just for fertility, but overall health, heart health, and gastro health. 30 plant points per week. So just aiming for as much food as you can from a whole different variety of plants. So anything that comes from a plant. So, not just fruit and vegetables, but also things like grains as well. So quinoa is an example, and your herbs and spices. Prebiotics, so things like artichokes and leeks and onions and garlic. So they basically help to feed the gut microbes and help them flourish. So you just kind of have to think of them as like little pets that you want to feed every day. And then also good lifestyle habits as well. So like good sleep and stress management. Again, all of the other stuff that we've discussed today.
Good sleep, she says, keeping everyone awake tonight. I think for me, a big list can be kind of daunting. I feel like all of us are going to be like running downstairs, opening the fridge, get a bunch of kale, and like just chew on it. You're like, I need to get all of this into me. But for me, I think the practical steps, like having your iron every second night or whatever it is. But when it came to me understanding like how to support my gut microbiome, I physically started thinking of my gut microbes as if they were like as if they needed to be fed first. And when you think about the fermentation process, so like to make anything ferment, it requires sugar. It needs to be fed sugar, and it needs the actual bacteria have to be fed. Um, she says, I make my own kombucha. If anyone wants a SCOBY, I will send it to you.
Ew.
Yeah, I do. It's great. Um, it's just the scientist in me getting to do science at home. It's like an experiment making my kombucha. But for me, I think every single morning, again, a bit like my 3 bean queen, you may not like it, you may not feel like it, but I sure as hell would rather eat 3 spoons of that and know that I'm getting in my fiber. And I think with the same thing with little things like in the morning, I don't really like kefir, but I get kefir, and first thing in the morning, I say, if I just chug some of that, at least I'm feeding my gut microbes before I'm putting anything else in there. So I think of feeding them, and in turn, they will feed me. And I feel like since I've started to do that, I have never felt better. And I think if you're of the generation of my generation, which was you starved yourself Wednesday Thursday for a Friday night out. This was the college days. Like this were we were the generation of people who were just told everything was like you had to be skinny in order to be to look good, like horrendously skinny. And I think since I've changed my approach to what I eat, which is all about eating natural foods, but really increasing my gut microbiome by saying, right, I'm going to eat my fiber, I'm going to eat my 3 bean queen, I'm going to slug some kefir, I'm going to throw some chia seeds into my smoothie, I'm going to try and get some spinach in a smoothie and you have a load of fruit with it. I'm going to try and eat like a handful of nuts. I'm going to leave a bowl of nuts just so I'm like, oh, I'll eat some of those. Just little things can go a really long way. I find like I don't crave food and sugar in the same way that I used to, and I know that's not just me. I think that is a general satiety thing. There's a massive study that came out saying the different abundances of different types of bacteria led to people's cravings. So it's your bacteria that were like, give me the sugar. We're being controlled by the bacteria. So it wasn't the person who didn't even necessarily felt like it or was addicted to the sugar. It was actually the fact that you have a high amount of these bacteria in your gut. They're like, feed me sugar, and then people would eat more. So there's a lot of evidence. There's a better way of explaining how I've just explained that, which is like that we're being ruled by our gut microbes. But bear with me, that's kind of how it works. And I think if we start to think about our gut microbes as being important parts of our health that need to be fed too, we start to treat ourselves different as well. Okay. It goes without saying that stress is actually highly linked with our overall health, egg and sperm health, because high cortisol can actually disrupt your ability to ovulate. So when it comes to stress, a lot of stress is non-negotiable. We all have to work. We all have to, tolerate certain things, but when it comes to negotiable stress, those are the things that you can leave out. When it comes to this journey, especially if you're going through a fertility journey or if you need fertility treatment, it is really important that you say, if there's any amount of stress that I can eliminate in my life, I'm going to do that. Whether it's avoiding people that are toxic, whether it's avoiding things that really stress you out, even for a short amount of time, or supporting stress regulation by getting more movement, trying to a bit more exercise, trying mindfulness, or getting better sleep. Those are things that are really worth bearing in mind when it comes to all of the parameters of egg health and sperm health and our overall mental and physical health. Going to move on because this is basically wrapping everything up. Sleep and stress and movement are really important alongside all of the healthy factors of your diet. Emily, should we take some questions if anyone is still there?
Yes. I'm glad that you answered about stress as well because somebody did ask how best to manage stress 5 months into conception journey. Um,
And
so
that's the difficult thing because we essentially have the more stress that we get, the longer it takes to conceive, the more likely we are to feel really stressed. So it's kind of a difficult one because people end up saying, just relax and don't think about it, but actually it's quite stressful. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Emily, if you want to, we can start picking some out. We can start grouping some of these
Yeah.
questions.
Someone just asked specifically about fish recommendations. So is is there a specific fish that is less recommended during pre-pregnancy, i.e., no or limited salmon? So I mentioned about oily fish, limiting it to 1 to 2 times per week. Again, that's just because of the toxicity, and we have to be mindful of high levels of magnesium, but also they can contain high amounts of PCBs, which is another chemical unfortunately found in the ocean. So we have to be mindful. So no more than 1 to 2 portions per week. In terms of other types of fish, we're fine to eat, but the only ones to be mindful of are marlin, swordfish, and shark. Those three are not avoided, trying to conceive and pregnant. But I mean, good luck if you can find that on the shelves here.
I'm not planning on eating shark anytime this week.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. I think it is worth mentioning. I'm looking at some of the questions involving around ovulation and not picking up ovulation. Track with ovulation strips and your cervical mucus. Your cervical mucus should be like the egg whites, but if not, I would definitely get a blood test. It's what we recommend here. We'll ask you a full health assessment. We'll recommend a personalized panel of bloods that's appropriate for you. We'll check all your hormone levels. You can test on the third day of your cycle from home. We've really looked into all the how we extrapolate everything from the health assessment to your blood results in the context of your lifestyle to give you a proper gynecology written report. But also we've coded over 54,000 clinical scenarios to really work out what all of your blood results mean for you in the context of your symptoms, menstrual health, and your intention for being there. So just to give you an idea of what you can do if you're looking for a blood test and the results that we can give you. Then when it comes, somebody's asked about cycles varying between 29 and 36 days. It's not necessarily a red flag. It just means that ovulation is happening, but not necessarily always on the same day. So even if you see variation between the length of your cycle, it just actually makes it a little bit more difficult to predict when you're ovulating. Then somebody has asked about very short and light periods. So that could actually indicate when you get really short and light periods, it could indicate that your endometrial lining is quite thin and typically signals low progesterone. So it's worth checking your progesterone. So I would recommend doing a test and just making sure that your progesterone levels are high enough. So we can help you with that.
And there are nutrients that can help with that, so things like vitamin C as well. So if you want tailored support for that, then come see us and we can help with the
Talk to Emily. She will tell you everything.
well.
So vitamin C helps with your progesterone levels.
What other foods? Did you
I'm
say what
saying,
else?
does vitamin
Yeah.
C help with your progesterone?
Vitamin C, yeah. So there's quite a few different foods that help with implantation and the environment in general. And there's a few different foods that help to support progesterone specifically, vitamin C being one of those. The others are, there are just.
And this will be emailed to everybody, by the way, afterwards. A few people have asked that.
I think B6 and folate as well are other ones that support, but I can't remember the list off the top of my head, but there are a few.
Okay, there were a few questions about coming off the hormonal coil or the Mirena coil. Yeah, it's quite common after you come off the hormonal coil to have irregular cycles for at least 3 to 6 months, actually. But you can be fertile during that window, but it's actually quite common that people have irregular cycles. Sometimes you can have irregular cycles after coming off your form of contraception. We tend to tell people for up to a year, we tend to tell people to wait 3 to 6 months after coming off their form of hormonal, at least 3 months after coming off their form of hormonal contraception before even trying, because you want to give yourself a washout period to get rid of those hormones out of your body. So when it comes to the Mirena coil, so it thins the lining, so your periods often just stop. There's no studies to show that it affects your fertility, and you should actually be able to ovulate again within a few weeks. Somebody's asked about PCOS and whether it gives you a higher ovarian reserve. Yes, technically you have a higher ovarian reserve. What it means is because you have polycystic ovaries, so you have many different cysts containing many different ovarian follicles, which would be essentially the eggs. It's just that you have irregularity when it comes to ovulation, and very often those eggs don't actually reach maturity. So hopefully that's, if you have PCOS, you have a high AMH, which means you don't necessarily have better fertility, which is why we test anyone who we suspect that has PCOS based on your symptoms. We'll test your AMH, your cycling hormones, but also we'll test your androgens because that helps us to confirm if you have PCOS.
Someone
And
had, sorry.
go on.
You, no, sorry, I didn't know. I didn't realize you were still answering that one.
No, go for it.
Move on. Just because we touched on this earlier as well, somebody asked about how should our diet change over the course of our cycle, which
Mm-hmm.
could be a whole other webinar. But I guess just to try and keep it short and sweet, this is definitely an area that has been lacking in terms of research, but it is an area that is starting to be researched. So there is some kind of research, but I guess some kind of common sense coming, that we can extrapolate as well. Is so in terms of like if you're menstruating, obviously you need to be mindful that you're getting iron in through the diet. Thinking about things that can exacerbate symptoms. So perhaps diarrhea at the start of your cycle. So avoiding stimulants, things like caffeine, alcohol. Towards the end of your cycle, so late luteal phase, you might be getting bloating. So trying to think about reducing things like salt intake. Mid-cycle, you're likely to have more energy, and it might be that you're able to lift heavier weights, stuff like that. So it might be that you increase things like your protein there, making sure that you've got good pre-workout foods in there, and then good recovery as well. And you tend to recover from sports actually a lot quicker in that mid part of your cycle, so around ovulation. But actually, at the end of your cycle, luteal phase, you might find it more difficult to recover. So it's about trying to get more of those antioxidants in there as well. So things like your omegas, again, just to make sure that you recover well from the sport. That was a swift answer, but
Great, thank you. Okay. Does it make a difference which source you get the omega from?
yeah. So yeah, I did touch on that. So it's better to get
You
it
did.
from oily fish. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
can get it from plant-based versions, but that will give you the type that's ALA. ALA only has a 5% conversion rate into EPA and DHA, and we want the EPA and DHA for fertility, and it's the DHA that's really important throughout pregnancy as well. So either supplementation or oily fish.
Okay, great. I think we're going to have to wrap up there. What we'll do is we tend to do a summary of all the questions that are the most frequently asked questions, and we send it afterwards. I for anyone, I would just recommend checking in on your hormones first. I'm not trying to sell to you. It's just that 68% of people have at least one hormone out of range. We see it from our data time and time again. People are trying all of these different things, and it's a simple thing. We had somebody email us, a beautiful soul email us yesterday and just say thank you for what you're doing. They spent 10 years going through treatment only to finally be tested with fertility and find out that they had a problem with their prolactin levels. So it is really worth booking in with Emily. She is an encyclopedia for all of the things that you personally should be doing. She'll look at your diet, she'll look at all the things that you're missing. And this is what we do. We're so passionate about helping people have the family that they want to have. So please, if you are not following Fertility, do follow us on socials. We are a small female founded team, and we give our lives to this. So there's little ways you can support us, and hopefully this has been informative for all of you, and spread the word as well if you know anyone who's going through this. And look after yourselves. Thank you, Emily. Have a good night
I'm
and
gonna
take
answer
care,
some
everyone.
questions.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you. That was so much fun.
Thanks. Best of luck.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.